welcome back to the channel. It's been named Your Gear Sucks, and frankly, your gear probably does. No, I'm just kidding. It's a channel that lets you know what's good about your gear, what might not be good about your gear, and to maximize your gear, and that's exactly what this is. You guys enjoyed that last video with the spark comparison, so I figured I'd piggyback on that and do a episode on how to make your Spark a stage amplifier. So everything from the Spark 40 to the Spark Mini to the Spark Go, you can actually use them on stage. And here's how. Let's get started. There are two things that you need to keep in mind: what you're sending the audio signal to and what kind of cable you're going to use to do it. Typically, the way it works is that these guys might have kind of different configurations and how to do it, but I'm going to walk you through all of them, so don't fret. Now, I'm going to switch the camera to the overhead so you can see what I got here. We got three different cables we're going to test out. You got your typical RCA to 1/8 inch stereo cable right here. So that's cable number one. It's probably the least common one that you're going to use on stage. This is probably more common. This is 1/8 inch stereo, so your headphone jack cable out to two mono left and right 1/4 inch cables. And these are very important. This is probably the most common cable you might use on a stage with your Spark. This is what I typically bring with me if we're going to stage areas on Spark. And this one's a bit more complex. It's called a summing cable. This one I built myself, but you can find a summing cable online. They are different from your typical mono to mono 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch. This is a 1/4 inch mono from an 1/8 inch stereo. And inside this little recess right here is a little resistor that I soldered in to reduce the signal so that you have a combined stereo signal into a mono jack signal. With this, you can actually also use one of these to do the same thing, except it's only going to come out one side. It's going to go in stereo, typically left, and it's going to come out mono, typically left as well, and you use that instead of this. This is a bit more of a consolidated, elegant version, and you really only need to use this guy on one of these three amps here, and I'll explain that in a second. So we have your 1/8 inch stereo to two mono left and right out, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch stereo to summing cable, 1/4 inch mono, and we have your 1/8 inch stereo to your RCA. Now, on the table here, I have this giant speaker here. And the reason I have this here is because this is going to sub in for the typical speaker that you might find at a club or a bar or something that you're going to be playing through. This one is often used, it's an older model, but it's often used as a wedge speaker, a monitor speaker for vocalists and guitarists and stuff like that. But you might also see them hung up as the top end for a bar left and right. But this is a powered Yorkville, I think NX55P. Powered. This one's 550 watts RMS, 1200 watts peak. It's loud. It does the job. So this is what is going to mimic our output, right? So typically we want the amp to be, put the guitar signal going into the amp. The amp is going to make it sound all beautiful, and we want it output through the big stage speakers. And this is how you turn your Sparks into an amp that you can use on stage. So typically on stage these days, you're going to have these guys monitoring back to you, so you'll be able to hear yourself, and you'll have these guys out to the crowd as well in a small bar or club. So basically, the need for giant amplifiers is not really a thing anymore. I mean, people can do them, but a lot of that's just like wow factor type stuff nowadays, because most bars and clubs worth their salt who do live music will have a decent PA system that you can just tap your amps into to get the sound that you want. So typically, you don't go direct into these speakers. You go through a mixing board of some sort, that the mixing person, the sound person at the venue will have control over, and that's why I have this unit right here. This is just your basic mixing board, but it has the input. It's got your XLRs, it's got your 1/4 inch, and it's got your RCAs, which we're going to use to send straight into the speaker system here, and I'm going to demonstrate that as well. But we can also do direct connect into these speakers, because on the back side of this speaker has a bunch of different inputs as well that take these connections. So let's start off with the simplest way, right? So the simplest way, let's say you have a home stereo and you want your spark to go over the home stereo system. Your home stereo can do it. So you take your RCA, your home stereo typically has an RCA in, right? Out of the headphone jack, got your spark on, your RCAs into your red and your white, and I will go grab the guitar. I'm going to turn the volume up to unity. So now it's coming through here because the output from this mixer is going into this speaker. So you'll be able to get a sense of what your home stereo, if it's decent, might sound like. And of course, the speaker is being recorded by a 57 here. I might even push it up a little closer. But yeah. There you go. All that sound was coming through here. It was nice and clean. There's no weird noise. It's a little bit of noise, but it's just the nature of unbalanced cables, right? That's a simple thing. You can use one of these cables coming out of your spark into your home stereo or even into a mixing console like this. And with your wireless connection thing, you don't even have to have the spark near you, although you might, to switch the presets and such. Okay, so let's bring the levels back down. All right. Now, the second way you might want to do this, let's take this guy out, toss it off to the side. And this is the way I usually bring it, because it gives me the option for a mono input, because these guys are split, and or a stereo input, which gives you a great advantage, because it gives you a stereo output comes out of the spark, and if you have two channels that you can input, you actually have stereo separation. Although in most bars and clubs, everything is down mixed to mono anyway, it's still a cool feature to have. So again, let me switch cameras. 8-inch jack into the back, headphone output. Got your 2/4 inch ins that go into, let's do channels 7 and 8. So red into right, white into left, and we should have, this might actually be louder because you can already hear the signal coming through. Switch camera back. Same thing. So in a mixing board like this, it also actually gives you control over individual volume of that channel. You want to add more bass into it, or want to shelve some high end. Gives you some EQ control. And on this particular mixer, we actually have inline compressors as well. Now, if you only had one input, let's say only one input on that channel, 1/4 inch, right? Now everything, you guys are going to be hearing this in mono anyway, but you would do that and you'd switch the balance on that channel. Let me switch cameras again. You switch the balance on that channel all the way over, acts as a mono output, same thing, right? Now, we get to this cable right here, right? So you bring the volume down, pull this guy out. Let's set it off to the side. So the only time I would use a summing cable is for the Spark 40. Now, there's a specific reason for that, and that is in the app software. So if you go into the Spark control software, the app, and you go into the settings for the amp, on the Spark Mini and the Spark Go, it will actually allow you to select stereo or mono output. When it's mono output, you don't actually need one of these guys. You can actually have like a mono cable coming out and into the thing. But typically I just leave it at stereo because with the 2/4 inch guys, you can just have a mono, take one of the channels, pop it in, right? Doesn't matter. So I leave these guys at stereo. But with the Spark 40, if you go into the app, there's no way to switch the stereo out to a mono out. At least the last time I checked. So because of that, you need to use a summing cable, which takes a stereo input, 1/8 inch, and converts it to a mono output. Now, you'll be able to use this on different amp cabinets, even the effects return on some amplifiers that have an effects send return. You can use this on an effects return, which will give a completely different sound. But you need to use one of these with the Spark 40 if you're going to use one of the outputs. Theoretically, you can use a Spark 40 and use one of these as well and just use one of these guys because half the signal is coming to this as well. But sometimes it's nice to just switch it to mono in the app, and so you get a consolidated signal, so the left-right, any spatial left-right effects all get consolidated into a mono and you get to output it. With this guy, it's stereo out all the time because it's using the headphone out jack for the output. So because of that, you got to use the summing cable, which actually consolidates the stereo signal into mono. I'll demonstrate that here. So let's turn off the Mini. And take this guy, let's pop it into the left side. Let's turn on this guy, let's pop our suit into there, and we should have our signal. There you go. That's the summing cable being used. So right now what you're hearing is just one side coming through, reconsolidated to stereo, or reconsolidated to mono, but it's there's actually a stereo signal coming out, being consolidated by the actual cable into a mono input. Now I can go direct in. Sounds great. Loud. Beautiful and loud. Now, I would test the same thing on the Spark Go, but the Spark Go, in terms of software and output and everything, is almost exactly, it's this exact same environment as the Spark Mini. So if I were to connect the output on here to the cable, let's do that. I can actually switch between the two. I'm not going to run through the whole thing, I'll just do a quick test so that you can hear that even with the Spark Go, you can use this as a preamp on stage and it be loud. Okay. Let's bring this down, pop out our summing cable, pop in our thing. Our Spark Go is on. There we go. So I have a bit of a different preset on this. It's a little bit louder noise-wise and all that kind of stuff, but it is just as good. I'm tempted to... Here, let me bring the levels down a little bit. Okay, so this is a bit more of a metal preset. Loud. Let me bring that down just a tad. And that was out of the go. Beautiful. Let me turn that down again. So, you can see that any one of these can be used as a preamp to get plugged into a system, a setup on stage, and give you the sound that you need. Especially if you're just using one sound all night. Obviously, you can use your phone to tweak your sounds as you need them, which basically means you don't even have to have this guy near you. That's why these things are nice. You put it near the mixing box or whatever, wherever the input is, and you have that off the side of the stage. I have it unplugged now so you can actually hear the sound coming through the amp. But yeah, you can have it set off to the side of the stage, plugged into direct line in, and then you tweak everything through your phone, which is kind of a cool thing. And then even a little bit more advanced than that, if you have your sounds dialed in, you just use Footswich Airsep to switch between your tones. Easy peasy. And the Airsep does work with the Go, works with the Spark Mini, works with the Spark 40 as well. Now, one last thing we're going to do. Now, I was going to bring up one of my tube amps to show you how one of these can serve as the preamp section on the tube amp, and you get crazy sounds out of it. But instead, we're going to use this and pretend it's a cabinet or something, and we're going to do direct connection from, let's say, the Spark Go, because that's going to be proof of concept. The tiniest little guy is going to be basically outputting 1200 watts of sound, of raw sound, which is going to be great. All right, first things first, I'm going to turn the speaker off. I'm going to turn the mixer off. Unplug this, because we don't need that anymore. Unplug that. I'm going to go through all this nonsense. Let me switch cameras so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay. So removing all the cables, we're just taking the mixer off the table because we don't actually need it right now for this part of the demonstration. So we're going to take this guy right here and we're going to play it through this guy right here. Direct connection. So you're going to be able to see exactly what that sounds like. And again, what we're doing with this, we can do with this, we can do with this. So I'm going to, for demonstration's sake, let's flip this over so you can actually see the input environment on the speaker. So you can see here we have your balanced input, your XLRs, unbalanced. This is actually can be balanced, but it's unbalanced. And then you have like line in over here. So on some speakers you have line in, which are your RCAs, but this one has 1/4 inch line ins. But because this one has a balanced line in, even though we're not sending a balanced signal, we're still going to use the left here to go into that. And we're going to pop this into the headphone jack, and we're going to go one step further. See, since we have only one line coming in, we are going to go into the app. And we go, let me load up the Spark app. Okay, so here's where we're going to demonstrate we're successfully connected. You can see, and I'll have screenshots of this stuff. So right now we're on the metal setting. Now if you go in here, and then you basically the little 3 icon down in the corner, you see we have it up. This thing is not going to auto focus, but that little 3 icon in the corner, and then you click on the amp. When you click on the amp, you're going to see HP line out. So headphone line out. See, it says stereo right now. I'm going to switch that to mono. What that does, it takes the sound in the amp and it consolidates it down to a mono signal. Since we have only one input coming in here, that is what we want. So once we got that, this guy's connected. Let's flip this speaker around again. Let me get the studio going again. Cam 1. All right. Okay, pop this back over here for demonstration purposes. Okay, now when I turn this speaker on, it might be really loud, so I have to be very careful. I'm going to turn the volume completely down on my guitar here, but let's flip it on. Turning the volume up and down on the Spark Go. So that's that junk junk is the little sound that it makes when you're at max volume. So we're at max volume on the Go. I don't have a pick, so I'm just doing this with my fingers. There you go. Clean, distorted sound, cool sounding. You can actually use, increase the level on this, see how much louder we can go. We're only at half volume on this guy right now. But let me... bring that back down to parity, unity, as they call it. So that's a direct line in. I wouldn't recommend that, only because it gives you less control over how loud the output is going to be on this thing. I'd recommend going into a mixer first. And most bars and clubs, small clubs, have mixers that you can patch into, and then that mixer will allow you to adjust levels better than doing it from your Spark. But yes, I know we're at max volume, but that is a demonstration of how to turn your Spark product, your Spark amp, into a stage amp. Hope you enjoyed that, and I'm showing you why your gear does not in fact suck. But if you like the channel, we're gonna actually do a few more of these. I got a bunch of ideas in mind about what to do for future videos, and one of them is going to be kind of funny. It's it'll actually be why a certain kind of thing sucks, but we all have it. We all seem to have one. Yeah, if you enjoyed it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna do a few more of these. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Cheers. Rob out. Did I do that wrong?